In a quarry where a fortress is being built, hundreds of slaves work in exhaustion, under the searing heat of the blazing sun. Orders like lifting the water or filling holes with rice straws fill the place, with the unwilling workers grudgingly doing them. The one giving the orders is a goblin sitting cozily on top of a huge, long log carried by two humans. The man in front has a grimace on his face, trying to smile through the log's heaviness and his own suffering. This slave's name is Choi Hyunseok, and this is how he ended up in this situation. Hyunseok is a professional wrestler, claiming the title of strongest man in the world and the championship title for 2 years. At 27 years old, he's already recognized as the best fighter in the world. His record of 23 wins and 0 losses is considered a great feat in his age, and he retired with no taints on his victory streak. Hyunseok is very much looking forward to the rest of his life filled with money and women. However, just after his retirement, the white truck of doom makes a strike, deleting him from life and making all his savings worthless. As he laments his fate, he thinks to himself it's better this way. There will be no more training in defenses. He has no family or friends who will mourn for him, which is a relief. Just then, a bright light appears in front of him, and out of it comes an angel. The angel says she's sorry for being late, and she calls Hyunseok an SS-class warrior. She introduces herself as Rachel, a headhunter who scouts for souls that left the earth. When Hyunseok asks her to elaborate, she gives him 2 options. First, he can accept his death and wait for his reincarnation as a pitiful old bachelor. Or he can be resurrected as a warrior and save a world that's been waiting for him. Instantly, Hyunseok thinks that the world waiting for him is full of women and luxuries. But he takes time to think about the choices. He finds the explanations lacking for his understanding. However, Rachel is eager to convince him that the second option is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. She continues to ramble about the benefits that Hyunseok will get. But the most important thing he hears is that the system is giving the chosen warriors status screens to get stronger, as part of their bonus. Hyunseok thinks that if he chose to be a warrior, his life will be filled with fighting, which isn't what he wants since he just retired. Rachel sees that he's not paying attention, so she explains again. If Hyunseok chooses to be a warrior, the village chief will be hospitable to him. And if Hyunseok agrees to solve the chief's problems, the chief will promise to marry off his renowned beautiful daughter to him. Rachel does all this explaining with puppets, which doesn't impress Hyunseok at all, so she switches to plan B. Rachel turns away, saying Hyunseok doesn't seem to be interested in her offer. That's fine then, if he wants to be reincarnated to be an old bachelor working hard in his next life. At this, Hyunseok grabs her feet and pleads for her to wait. Rachel knows he's hooked, so she adds that there's no guarantee if he'll even be born as a human at all. Hyunseok desperately agrees with Rachel's condition. That is, to be a warrior so he can receive the village chief's gifts. Rachel smiles wickedly as she prepares the circle. Hyunseok is surprised that he's going to be sent without proper training or orientation. Rachel says there's no need to wait when he's going to a wonderful world. With that, the circle engulfs Hyunseok and soon disappears. Satisfied that she's just finished another job, she answers a call from the higher-ups reporting that warrior candidate Choi Hyunseok has been successfully transferred and asking if she'll receive her bonus right away. However, not everything goes to plan. When Hyunseok opens his eyes, he finds himself in a dimly lit room with a voice demanding him to wake up. He thinks this is the village chief Rachel mentioned, but he changes his mind when the same voice threatens to gouge his eyes out, accompanied by a sharp punch on the gut. Hyunseok gets up angrily and is about to confront whoever punched him, but he's greeted by a gigantic man made of pure muscles and wearing a bullhead mask. This man demands why Hyunseok is sleeping in the slave quarters when he's supposed to be working. Hyunseok says he's a warrior, but the man just looks down on him. Hyunseok is confused. There must be a mistake because this savage-looking man doesn't seem to be a village chief. But Hyunseok can't believe Rachel has made a mistake. This man must be his tutorial quest to see if he's worthy to be a warrior. If that's the case, then Hyunseok knows what to do. He lands a well-placed kick on the man's head. Hyunseok smirks as he expects the man to fall to the ground. To his utter shock, his kick only annoyed the man. The man grabs Hyunseok's ankle, complaining about the sudden surge of men calling themselves warriors appearing at his place. Then the man punches Hyunseok again, sending him to sleep. When Hyunseok wakes up, he screams to see that bullhead again for another round. But instead of the bullhead, a goblin with a sword enters Hyunseok's room. The creature threatens to cook him whole if he screams again. Hyunseok meekly promises to be quiet, Once alone, he lets out his frustrations. It's clear that the promised wonderful world and the village chief with a beautiful daughter are all scams. Just then, another voice calls to Hyunseok. It's a man imprisoned in the next cell. He says he's a senior warrior and that this place is the fortress that enslaves humans, owned by the demon lord. Hyunseok asks what's really happening, so the senior warrior tells him everything. Apparently, he and the other inmates are all self-proclaimed warriors who unfortunately have become slaves in this fortress. The bullhead's name is Redrun, the demon lord overseeing the place, and the goblin from earlier is the nastiest guard named Jack. The reason why warriors ended up here is because of a demon named Rachel, who sent them all there by mistake. The warriors who come from other places are not supposed to be there. They should be in cities or in rural areas, starting as powerless individuals meant to get stronger as they progress. But in their case, they're sent here in the demon lord's army as their starting point. Hyunseok can't believe what he's hearing. If this is true, then he's been scammed by that wicked woman who called herself an angel. And that's how Hyunseok ended up here, slaving under Jack's supervision and chanting the demon's oath. Finally, Jack rings the bell, signifying the end of the day's work. He curses all the slaves gleefully, which makes Hyunseok think he'll get back to this freak one day. In his cell, Hyunseok remembers that Rachel mentioned a status window as his perk for being a warrior. So he summons it, and instantly it appears, showing the words, "Game Start." He checks his status. They are fairly okay considering he's still at level 1. He has no skills yet, and his warrior/hero points are 0. The senior warrior is impressed upon seeing his stats. He believes Hyunseok can escape this place and eventually help them. But Hyunseok is not interested. He feigns sleepiness. Later, when he's sure everyone's asleep, he checks his status window again. There are 2 things worth stacking points in: his magic energy and his warrior points. Apparently, the others have no idea about warrior points, which means no one has tried acquiring any for it. Just as Hyunseok is about to click on it, a familiar light appears beside him, and out of it comes Rachel, offering to explain what it is about. Rachel enthusiastically explains about warrior points, which are also called hero points. Warrior points are an important feature that can make life easier. They can be earned by completing quests. Before Rachel can finish, Hyunseok grabs her. It's noticeable how she's the size of a fairy, and her wings have changed from that of an angel's to 4 transparent ones. Hyunseok is not happy to see her again, nor does he care about warrior points. He's pissed at her for swindling him into believing the village chief's storyline, so he gives her a good beating to get back. Later, Rachel apologizes while she's hanging on a stick. She explains that it was a mistake that sent Hyunseok here in the demon lord's lair. She says her magic circles were broken because she spilled coffee on them. Because of this, Rachel was demoted. Her punishment is to be Hyunseok's personal fairy until he defeats the Demon King. Although she's demoted, she still has 100 years worth of internship. While they're discussing, the system has surrounded them with soundproofing magic. To Rachel's surprise, Hyunseok says he's not interested in becoming a warrior anymore. He doesn't want to defeat the Demon King because it's easier to live a normal life as a slave. Rachel argues that even if there are many prospective heroes, Hyunseok has a great potential to reach SS level. Still, Hyunseok says he's not obliged to do anything. He has no mission to defeat anyone. He doesn't want to live his second life fighting constantly. Rachel is aghast. Is Hyunseok just another muscle brain who knows nothing except fighting and women? But what about her? We see what really happened when Rachel received her punishment. Even though she admitted her mistakes, she couldn't accept her demotion to becoming Hyunseok's personal fairy. On top of that, she must stay with him until he defeats the Demon King. But the Divine Overseer says the decision was final. As a personal fairy, Rachel's duties would include active cooperation and going through success and failure with her assigned warrior. The Divine Overseer reminds her that she wouldn't be able to return until her assignment was complete. And with no other choice, Rachel was sent to where Choi Hyunseok was. She remains with him all the time, but the problem is anyone might see her. When someone knocks on Hyunseok's door, Hyunseok grabs Rachel and hides her. Good thing Rachel can use stealth magic, so the goblin hasn't seen her. The goblin orders Hyunseok to report to Redrun's office. There, Hyunseok listens to the boss while Jack sits happily on his shoulders. To Hyunseok's surprise, Redrun compliments him. Apparently, Jack likes Hyunseok as his mount and has put in a good word for him. So Redrun offers the human the position of head slave. He wants Hyunseok to speed up the work of the slaves. Rachel is very much against this promotion, but Hyunseok accepts it with passion. He promises to do his best to make other humans work. Ridran is pleased and says he'll write a letter to admit Hyunseok to the Demon King's army. There goes Hyunseok's dream of escaping the fortress. But he has no other choice. He must do what needs to be done to survive. Surprisingly, being the head slave suits him best. Only a few days in the position, and Hyunseok is already relishing giving orders, belittling his fellow humans, and leading the chance to praise the Demon King. The system notices his efforts, thus awarding him points for his hidden ability, which is charisma. Anything that can increase his points or his level is welcome to Hyunseok. But the slaves think he's lost his mind, and Rachel is adamantly against what he's doing. She cannot accept the things Hyunseok does to gain Ridran's favor. She reminds him that he needs to escape so he can go on his own adventure. But Hyunseok reminds her as well that it's the system that told him what to do. Apparently, on the night Hyunseok accepted the position, Rachel confronted him. She called him crazy for easily bowing down in front of a Demon King's army's official. Hyunseok grabbed her, blaming her for landing them here in the first place. Just then, a hero quest appeared, telling Hyunseok his new mission. The system recognized his situation was due to some idiot's mistake, referring to Rachel, and so he was given a chance to be encouraged. He must gain Ridran's favor to earn 100 hero points, because a true hero must know his enemies. At the present, Rachel wonders why a hero quest like this exists. Only a higher-up can change the mission, so she doesn't understand why this unique quest is given to Hyunseok. Later, Jack orders Hyunseok to report to Ridran's office. Ridran compliments the new head slave for the increased productivity in the slave's work. Hyunseok says he's just a humble, uncivilized human, and it's all thanks to Ridran's instructions. Rachel shakes her head, disapproving the cheap flattery. But to her surprise, Ridran blushes at Hyunseok's response. Even his bullhead mask looks sundear. The system informs them that Hyunseok has achieved the Demon King's army official's favor, completing the hero quest. Hyunseok is flabbergasted that Ridran is that gullible to easy flattery. But he must strike while the iron is hot. He asks permission if he can train the slaves under the guise of improving their work. He employs his marketing strategies, convincing the officer of completing the fortress at a faster pace. Ridran thinks it's impossible to simultaneously train and work the humans, but he gives the idea the go signal. Later, while Rachel is lamenting, Hyunseok explains his plan. Hyunseok actually intends to use the slaves to start a rebellion. Since earning his position, he's learned important things. First, the fortress has 3,000 human slaves, but there are only about 500 soldiers belonging to the Demon King's army. Plus, there's a human alliance base not far from the fortress. If Hyunseok can control the slaves to start a rebellion and ask for help from the human alliance, they can eventually throw off Ridran and his troops. Rachel gets encouraged by this stroke of genius. Hyunseok says he needs to check the hero store since he got points from completing the quest. He's excited to see what he can get from the system's vault. Hyunseok expects to see an array of hero skills he can buy using the points. To his dismay, the only notable skills available are holding his breath for longer and delaying his bowl movement. The rest are household chores. Rachel laughs out loud, exclaiming that since Hyunseok is still at level 1, only meager skills are available for him. If he increases his stats and levels up, then more options will be available for him. Annoyed, Hyunseok shuts Rachel up. Days have passed, and Hyunseok continues to train the human slaves. There's order among them, and they chant praises for the Demon King and his army. Ridran sees them and is happy that Hyunseok is doing well with his job. Just then, Jack enters the office and announces an urgent report. He says that the human army is advancing towards the fortress. The 8th Division, the largest unit in the area and the last bastion of defense for the Demon King's army, is unfortunately defeated. It's only a matter of time before the enemies reach them, and it's unlucky that the attack happens right when the fortress is almost finished. Jack urges Ridran to escape, but the army officer contemplates what to do. He remembers an important concept in war victories: military supplies. The first rule of war is to never lose a competent supply officer. Ridran sees Choi Hyunseok's potential in gathering slaves and uniting them for a purpose, a valuable skill in battle. Therefore, he decides to save Hyunseok. Meanwhile, Hyunseok has no idea why Ridran suddenly jumps out of his office window and lands behind him. Ridran grabs Hyunseok's shoulders and orders him to come with him. Right at that point, they hear a human give orders to attack the fortress. Suddenly, there's a barrage of spears and arrows flying towards Ridran and Hyunseok. The Goblin army defends their boss, catching the weapons with their small bodies while the slaves run for their lives. The human soldiers easily barge through the gates and army, intent on bringing down the demon fortress. Someone sees Redrun and calls him the Red Nightmare. That soldier fearlessly leads his comrades in taking Redrun down. Hyunseok thinks this is his chance to betray Redrun, but he sees the demon officer grab the human soldier's head, crush it like a grapefruit, and slam the body onto the ground. Redrun uses his technique called the seventh movement, and suddenly an explosive destruction wave blows away all soldiers within the vicinity. Then Redrun turns to Hyunseok to ask if he's okay, as if he didn't just massacre a battalion of humans. Hyunseok salutes and says he'll leave with the officer immediately. Later, the human army has successfully invaded the fortress and driven out the demon army. This operation is a collaboration between the Mariat Kingdom and the Drazen Empire. The slaves who haven't managed to escape are all gathered in front of Oleven Grimir, a duke from the Drazen Empire and the leader of the Alliance. Once the evacuation of civilians has been confirmed, Oleven gives the orders to execute the slaves who call themselves warriors. Meanwhile, a convoy of carriages successfully drives away from the invaded fortress. In one of those carriages, Hyunseok is shaking with fear. He's just seen how Redrun effortlessly blew off his enemies' heads, which makes him lose hope for his future. Rachel cries to him that it's not too late to escape and ally with the human army, but Hyunseok tells her to keep quiet. Redrun, who has fallen asleep in their journey, wakes up and asks Hyunseok what's wrong. Hyunseok saves his butt by saying he feels honored to be traveling with Redrun. Again, the demon officer blushes at this cheap flattery. He says they're about to reach the headquarters of the 3rd Corps unit. There he intends to officially enlist Hyunseok in the Demon King's army. Hyunseok keeps repeating he's honored, but inside he feels stoned. When they arrive at the fortress, Redrun goes straight to the commander's office, with Hyunseok tagging along. The demon reminds the human to be mindful of his conduct in front of the commander, unless he wants to die. They enter an elegant hallway and stop in front of a luxurious door. Redrun announces himself to Commander Hemis, and a voice tells him to come in. Hyunseok is curious at the voice. Is this Commander Hemis a woman? Indeed she is. Hemis, the commander of the Demon King's army's 3rd Corps, is sitting comfortably in her golden chair, warmly welcoming Redrun. Hemis is a busty lady who leads the 3rd Corps of the Demon King's army. She has a blindfold over her eyes, and there are noticeable stitches all over her face and body. Hemis seems warm towards Redrun, complimenting his physique. The officer returns the praise, saying the commander has become more beautiful. Then he apologizes for being able to defend the fortress. Hemis waves away his regret, mentioning that it's the 8th commander's fault. Although she's smiling, her immense aura and disappointment are felt throughout the room. Hyunseok, who's been unsure on how to act in front of this commander, feels suffocated. The pressure is unbelievable, which is even greater than that of Redrun's. Eventually, Hemis notices Hyunseok. Redrun explains who Hyunseok is and mentions his intention to enlist him in the army. Now Hemis is totally hooked. Redrun is rarely impressed by any talent, especially a human. This should be fun. She points out that Hyunseok's body looks vulnerable, although a human joining the army isn't unheard of. Redrun agrees, that's why he offers to personally train the human. But Hemis disagrees. Redrun shouldn't waste his time on a mere human. As she says this, the stitches on her face open, revealing monstrous, flower-like appendages around the mouth. From inside, Hemis pulls out another creature. This whole sequence terrifies Hyunseok. Then he realizes Hemis is holding a demon dog. As the stitches close, Hemis says Hyunseok should be her new pet caretaker. The demon dog's name is Bobo, and Hyunseok will be responsible for looking after it. Hemis sees the terrified look on Hyunseok's face and asks if he doesn't like it. Hyunseok immediately salutes, saying he willingly accepts his new responsibility. Thankfully, Bobo doesn't seem aggressive towards him, who immediately latches onto him. Hemis reminds Hyunseok that Bobo is growing, so it must be continually fed. Bobo gets angry when he's hungry, and he tends to eat his caretakers. Bobo has its own quarters, and that's where Hyunseok and Rachel will stay too. Once alone, a new quest from the system appears. Hyunseok must survive the next few days by earning Bobo's affections. Once he succeeds, he'll earn 200 hero points. As Hyunseok looks at the sleeping Bobo, he wonders how he'll do it. Just then, a goblin enters the room. He's another caretaker for the pet, which makes Hyunseok think everyone is expecting him to end up as Bobo's snack. The dog wakes up and is already licking the goblin's head. The goblin hides behind Hyunseok and offers him to be the dog's snack. Hyunseok refuses to become food, so he pulls the goblin and throws it towards Bobo, saying it's snack time. The dog eagerly devours the goblin. Hyunseok and Rachel are both speechless upon seeing the dog munching happily on its meal. But it's not enough. Bobo spots the fairy Rachel and chases her. Hyunseok looks into the hero store to see if there's an extra large bone for the dog. There is, and he buys it for 30 hero points. He throws the bone, and the dog is entertained for about 30 seconds. Hyunseok quickly realizes that his safety is hugely dependent on whether Bobo gets his fresh meat or not. But there are things about dogs that are universal, regardless of origin. Hyunseok shouts the word walk, and immediately Bobo sits, attentively waiting for him. He brings the dog outside, intending to lead it to the kitchen. Bobo is overexcited. Hyunseok has to call its attention every few minutes. Rachel looks for the kitchen's directions. She spots a goblin, and Hyunseok asks where the kitchen is. But the goblin sees Bobo, who's already looking at him like it's next snack. Hyunseok has to remind the dog that the goblin is not food. When the dog walks away, Hyunseok asks the goblin again about the directions to the kitchen. Petrified, the goblin says they should go to the left before running away. Hyunseok and Rachel look at each other and laugh out loud. It's just so funny how the goblin is scared out of his wits. Hyunseok decides he can get meat from the kitchen to calm the dog down. When Rachel asks if he's really serious about taking care of the dog, Hyunseok says he is. If he'll have a family in the future, then having a dog is a must, so taking care of Bobo is like practice. Speaking of Bobo, the dog is nowhere to be found. Hyunseok screams, as he's about to reach his wit's end. Hyunseok has known from the start he was doomed when he accepted the role of being Bobo's caretaker. The dog has a short attention span, likes to munch on goblins, and can eat him at any time. It's just a disaster waiting to happen. Fortunately, Rachel spots the dog somewhere near the enclosure. Hyunseok puts on his puppy eyes after seeing Bobo, but he notices the blood on the dog's mouth. Bobo looks happy and full. Apparently, in the short time Bobo was missing, it has managed to terrorize a goblin's quarters nearby, annihilating most of them and eating someone called Commander Regis. Of course, Bobo thinks he's accomplished something, but Hyunseok and Rachel are both dumbfounded. He picks up the dog, and they run away as the mob of goblins starts to chase them. If Hyunseok won't do something, half of the fortress's population will end up as Bobo's meal. They turn around and reach a dead end. The goblins catch up to them. They all think it's the human who ended their commander's life. They are already planning to divide the humans and the dog's body parts. Hyunseok is in a pinch. No goblin seems to listen to him. He has no choice but to use his trump card. He looks at the goblins and shouts at them for being rude. How dare they chase away the magnificent furry little Bobo? Don't they know this brave dog belongs to Commander Himis? The goblins are taken aback, while the dog has no idea what's happening. Despite this, the goblins are still not believing the human, so Hyunseok puts Bobo down and commands it to go on beast mode. Instantly, Bobo's puppy eyes turn demonic, and the dog bares its teeth. The goblins finally recognize the commander's pet. Apparently they haven't seen it looking meek before. Bobo's rampage only resulted in one casualty, while the rest of the goblins bow down to apologize. They know not to mess up with Bobo or its caretaker. This instance yields a favorable outcome for Hyunseok. Because he managed to subdue many demons, he gets awarded by increasing his charisma attribute. Hyunseok contemplates this when someone speaks behind him. It's Himis herself, and she looks entertained upon seeing Hyunseok doing something interesting. At Himis' office, she inquires if it's true that Hyunseok used her name and Bobo to survive. Hyunseok agrees and bows his head in apology, thinking he's about to get punished. But he's getting the commander's mood wrong. In fact, Himis is complimenting his quick wit and boldness for using her name. She also recognizes that Hyunseok is brave too, unlike other humans who have come here. Most of the time, the demon army tends to use force to solve things. It's rare to solve problems using wits. She asks if Hyunseok has thought of becoming an executive. Hyunseok is taken back. He knows his skills are still low for such a rank. Himis agrees, saying it's hard for him now. But he can't keep using her name for protection. She explains to Hyunseok a significant rule in the army. A demon can participate in a decisive battle that lets them take the opponent's rank. Since Hyunseok is already listed in the army, he's covered by this rule. Himis says she'll protect him for a month. But after that, Hyunseok has to win against the opponent chosen by her. Each win will earn him another month of her protection. Hyunseok has to do this until he reaches the position of a battalion commander. Only then will Himis see him as useful. but if he loses, he shouldn't expect a peaceful death. Later, Hyunseok walks along the hall, depressed about the proposition Himis gave him. It's clear she only sees him as entertainment. He has no choice but to accept that proposition because who is he to refuse? His opponent has already been chosen, but Hyunseok doesn't feel positive about this. He turns to Rachel and asks what she meant when she said he has potential to become SSS rank. Rachel clarifies that she only meant a possibility, not a definite power. This means, at the end of the day, it's still up to Hyunseok to level up. Just then, he notices a bloody door where axes are stuck. He thinks this must be the kitchen. He opens the door and peers inside. An ogre sees Hyunseok, concluding that this human must be the one Commander Himis mentioned earlier. The ogre introduces himself as Kulkan, chef of the demon army. He demands to know what Hyunseok is doing there in the kitchen. Hyunseok says he's only there to ask for snacks for Bobo. Kulkan immediately understands that the pet caretaker must have changed. After all, it's a very unpopular job with a very high mortality rate. However, Kulkan refuses to give any food to Hyunseok. Commander Himis orders to not hurt the human, nothing more, nothing less. If Hyunseok really wants meat, then he must earn it. He must get it himself by hunting, just like the goblins on the table behind Kulkan, who are already chopping the limbs off of another unfortunate goblin. Hyunseok is shocked. If he's going to hunt, does that mean he must hunt the chefs of the demon army? Well, Kulkan does not exactly mean he should chop up the goblins that cook for the army. What he means is that Hyunseok must join them whenever they hunt for the meat that will be rationed to the army, and that he must put effort into earning his peace. And that is why he finds himself in the middle of chaos as the goblins try to subdue a gigantic wild boar. The animal has already put down several goblins, which makes Hyunseok lose faith if what he is doing is right. Rachel asks him if they should run away instead. Hyunseok thinks it's not wise to do that, not in the middle of the hunt. The best option for him is to make it look like he's doing something too. Kulkan calls him. Hyunseok expects Kulkan to order him to charge forward. However, that is not the case. The chef says the wild boar has been brought down, signifying the end of the first hunt. A goblin gives a status report. There are 12 casualties with many others injured. Kulkan thinks this is excellent and tells everyone to rest before they look for the next target. Hyunseok is shocked that this is just a normal occurrence during the kitchen staff's hunting trip. He can't think that the losses are worth the gain. While the goblins are resting, Hyunseok tells Rachel about his plan. He realizes he must join the hunt after all, meaning he will also have to try to fight and earn his meat. Rachel is shocked, but Hyunseok explains his half-formed idea. He's still at level 1, and his stats are meager. In order to level up, he needs to gain experience. But if he tries to gain experience by fighting head-on during the present situation, he might lose his life. So Hyunseok thinks that if he just manages to land the final blow, then maybe it will count as experience, which will help him level up. Rachel is dumbfounded. It is the first time she has heard this cheap tactic. She confirms that landing the last blow is allowed, but that is not what heroes do. Still, now that Hyunseok knows this is okay, he has confidence to join the melee. He says they are not in a position to be picky with how he must level up. He is still thinking about the proposition Himis gave him. At the end of the day, he must prioritize his survival if he is going to face an enemy at the end of the month. And the only way to do that is to gain experience. Hyunseok approaches Kulkan, and he excitedly says he is going to join the fight in their next hunt. Kulkan takes a good look at the human. This makes Hyunseok nervous. However, Kulkan gives a rich laugh and says a human saying something bold is likable. Hyunseok continues to give praise to the chef. Just like Redrun, Kulkan seems gullible when it comes to cheap flattery. Kulkan decides to let Hyunseok take the lead in the next hunt. Normally, they do not give this honorable position to newcomers, but Kulkan is making an exception for Hyunseok. Hyunseok tries to back away from this opportunity, but before that can happen, a goblin runs to them reporting about an incoming monster attack. They all hear howls, which means a pack of Yurun wolves have come. Kulkan says those wolves are not exactly dangerous, but their meat isn't tasty either. Still, meat is meat, so the chef tells everyone to prepare. Rachel decides to temporarily boost Hyunseok's health and strength stats. It should be enough to help him. Hyunseok hits Rachel for not giving him this attribute earlier. Regardless, Hyunseok is ready now. He recites his retirement plan, which is to get married to a blonde, noble lady and have 5 kids with her. Motivated, he flies over the goblins and wolves and accurately lands a punch on their prey. Instantly, he gains 4 levels up with just a single hit. If this continues, then he can reach 20 by the end of the day. So Hyunseok looks for the right opportunity, where a goblin is about to give the final hit. He will push the goblin aside, saying he slipped, and then he will be the one to end the Yurun's life. In Hyunseok's mind, all the available final blows in the world are his. Later, all Yuruns have been subdued. Hyunseok expects them to return to the base. However, he sees the goblins portion out the meat from their hunt. Culkin grabs his shoulder and asks what he is doing. The chef is already munching on his piece of meat. Hyunseok asks if it is okay to eat the rations for the military. Culkin explains that this is their privilege as part of the kitchen staff. Meat tastes better right after the hunt, so they must take the chance to eat some. Hyunseok is astonished. He cannot seem to get used to the weird ways of the demons. Culkin gives him a big piece of meat. He says he deserves to have that since he also put his life on the line. Hyunseok has no choice. The meat is raw, but he takes a bite. After chewing, he realizes it is not too bad. It has a strong meaty scent, but it is bland and tough. His pride as a Korean is hit. The goblins should not risk their lives just for this lousy meat. Time to bring out his best weapon. If through this he can win the kitchen staff, then he can maybe ask favors from them in the future. Hyunseok opens the hero shop. If he has to spend his remaining points just to buy this item, then he will do it. And finally he acquires them. He buys cooking skills for 50 points, and the most important item for 20 points. The pinnacle of South Korean cuisine, the king of flavors, MSG. Rachel cannot believe that Hyunseok will waste his points on a canister of salt. She reminds him that points are not easy to come by, but Hyunseok defends his purchase. It is so worth it to have tasty meat in this world, if that is the only thing that can bring him pleasure. When cooked to perfection, nothing beats the juiciness, the smell, and the humanity of meat. After cooking, Hyunseok offers the meat to Culkin, asking him to take a bite of it. Culkin initially does not want to, as he is already full. But after Hyunseok's flattering persuasion, Culkin gives in. After one bite, the great chef of the demon army is taken back to his childhood memories. His life was simple back then, and he knew he was meant to become a great chef. Culkin gets teary-eyed at the incredible taste of the meat cooked by Hyunseok. Very pleased with this, he gives the human a huge bag of food so he can feed Bobo. He invites Hyunseok to come again if he needs more. Hyunseok arrives at Bobo's quarters. The dog gets aggressive and is about to attack, but after Hyunseok presents him with a tasty snack, Bobo reverts to an adorable puppy. The dog looks pleased as Hyunseok lays down rows of meat for its consumption. Hyunseok is pleased that he at least has given the dog what it needs. He promises to get more if it wants more, which makes Bobo gratefully turn to him. The system shows Hyunseok his status window, informing him that he has successfully completed his quest. He has earned Bobo's affections, and this earns Hyunseok his 200 hero points. He is pleased with himself as everything has gone to plan. He sees that he is level 23, and he has also earned 22 bonus points. Rachel sees this and congratulates him. She asks where he would use those points. Hyunseok does not know since he has no idea where they are used for. Then he teases Rachel, saying she should have said something about this at the start if it is that important. So Rachel goes into instructor mode and explains the basics. The bonus points can be distributed on 4 basic stats: strength, stamina, agility, and mana. All these help the hero navigate the adventures in this world. Strength increases power, stamina increases endurance and tenacity, agility increases reaction time, and mana affects the magical ability. When Hyunseok asks what about charisma, Rachel explains it is a hidden attribute that can only improve through training and not through points. The best way to use bonus points is to allocate them equally among the 4 stats. Hyunseok reasons that it is more logical to put everything in strength. Rachel clarifies that focusing on strength is good at the beginning. But in the long run, mana plays an important part. A mana-enhanced body is stronger than a pure muscle-trained body. Hyunseok understands the logic behind this. He gives 9 points to strength, 5 points each to agility and mana, and 3 points to stamina. Rachel approves this distribution. She tells him he should buy the fundamentals of mana control so he can start using the magic inside his body. However, when they check the hero's shop, it is not available. Rachel is confused because it is a common item. Meanwhile, Hyunseok is just disappointed that his assigned fairy is being useless again. 3 weeks have passed since. Hyunseok continues to hunt under the supervision of Chef Culkin. He manages to keep Bobo happy, and he finally reaches level 100. Hyunseok is so tired. He wonders if there are other heroes working as hard as him. Rachel asks what he's talking about as he is already a sinecure, someone who breezes through his job. Hyunseok is pissed. This fairy does not understand that he needs to work hard to maintain his position. Just then, a goblin enters the quarters. Commander Hemis wants to see Hyunseok in her office. A few minutes later, Hemis greets the human caretaker of her pet. She commends his strength as well as his doubled mana. Hyunseok says he is simply doing his job to keep Bobo happy. Still, Hemis thinks he is leveling up too fast. Could it be because of the leveling system for heroes? At this, Hyunseok gets alert. How did Hemis know that he is an appointed hero by the system? Hemis brushes his shock off. She has known about it since day one, and it is because she knows someone who is familiar with heroes. Now she asks him if he knows why she called him here. After several guesses, Hyunseok says it must be because of his upcoming battle by the end of the month. He remembers the conditions of that battle. With that said, the stitches on Hemis's face open while she speaks, demanding to know why he is acting like an idiot when he is supposed to work harder and getting stronger. There is no point for him to pretend. She reminds him that this battle is not for his improvement, but for her amusement. She is looking forward, not to a flashy performance or an overwhelming victory, but to a plot twist. And she trusts that Hyunseok will deliver that well. Later, Hyunseok contemplates his conversation with the commander. Apparently, Hemis has already picked his opponent. It is someone he will never be able to beat, and it will be a fight where the odds are against him. Rachel is worried this may be the end of their journey, but Hyunseok needs to think about this calmly. He decides he needs to know more about his opponent. He only knows the name, but he has not met him yet. Hyunseok remembers there is a gadget in the hero shop suitable for what he needs to do. He opens the hero shop and looks for the item named Combat Power Meter. It measures the target's strength, stamina, agility, and mana, and gives an approximation for each stat. Hyunseok can use this to measure power level and find others with similar stats and with whom he can train. After acquiring the device, Hyunseok tries it on and checks Rachel's stats. The device shows that her combat power is 375. Hyunseok has no idea if this is high or low. He lets Rachel peer through it so she can see his stats. However, Rachel cannot believe what she's seeing. She suggests that the device must be broken because it's just impossible that Hyunseok has those stats. Rachel feels incredulous that Hyunseok is much more powerful than him. His strength has reached 1560. She cries in severe disappointment as, just last month, her strength is in the 10,000. Contrary to Rachel's reaction, Hyunseok seems nonchalant about it. He is not impressed, especially since his only basis is Rachel's strength, so he tries to check Bobo's numbers. Hyunseok's and Rachel's jaws drop when they find out the dog's strength is 47,422. Now that puts things into perspective for Hyunseok. He decides to wear the device and go out to get an idea of the average strength of the goblins in the fortress. Hyunseok discovers that the stats of weaker goblins are not that different from his. On the other hand, captain levels such as Boltman have stats that are in the tens of thousands or higher. Hyunseok asks Rachel about his upcoming opponent. She says the name is Kirkin, a platoon leader that is said to have the brains of a pig. If Kirkin is a platoon leader, then his strength should be around 3,000. Hyunseok may have a chance, especially if he continues to level up. He and Rachel eventually walk into Kirkin, who is currently clinging in the training grounds. As Kirkin smashes a bat, Hyunseok sees that the orc's strength actually reaches 6671. If that is not a confirmation that Hyunseok is doomed, then nothing is. Just then, the system informs Hyunseok about a new quest. The system is giving him a fighting chance because a real hero does not give up easily. Hyunseok's quest is to reach combat strength of 3,000 in 1 week. He will get 300 hero points if he succeeds. Hyunseok thinks it's convenient to receive a quest like this, so he accepts it. It is do or die anyway, and he will make sure he will come for Hemis, and whoever is manipulating the circumstances. The next morning, Hyunseok reports to the kitchen for his usual join the hunt for Bobo's meal duties. Upon meeting Kulkan, Hyunseok checks out the chef's stats. Kulkan's strength is 35,230, which makes an alleged threat if he chooses to be. But this makes Hyunseok curious. Since the start, he has always felt that the goblins belonging to the kitchen staff have high combat strength. Indeed, through the device, he can see their stats are higher than his, despite their small build. And the explanation for that is simple. They have been fighting demonic beasts every day, which naturally increases their strength. This gives Hyunseok an idea. If he spars with someone whose stats are similar to that of Kirkin's, then he can get a general feel of how the fight will be. Out of the blue, he asks Culkin if he can spar with one of the chefs before their hunt. Hyunseok says he wants to be a bigger and better help once he learns something from the sparring. Culkin is hesitant. He already acknowledges Hyunseok's strength despite being human, but he is moved by Hyunseok's determination. Indeed, these demons may have incredible strength, but they are gullible in more complex things. And so, Culkin arranges an impromptu match between Hyunseok and Golbasem, one of the stronger fighters with 2620 fighting stats. All the goblins are thinking Hyunseok has gone out of his mind to end his life today. They are already planning how to divide the body parts of whoever loses. Culkin instructs Golbasem to not go overboard and just do the bare minimum. Culkin is unsure whether Golbasem understood. Regardless, he stands in the middle, and he signals the start of the spar. Hyunseok charges first, and he dodges Golbasem's punch. It looks like it is done on pure instincts, which is very familiar to Hyunseok. He has faced many opponents with this kind of fight in his previous life, so he knows well how to deal with this. He gives a swift but well-placed kick on Golbasem's face, sending the orc flying to the ground. Hyunseok and everyone is stunned that Hyunseok won. He thinks that if this is how it will be with his fight with Kirkin, then he may have a winning chance. After the short sparring, the kitchen staff proceeded to go hunting. They choose to forage the great forest north of the fortress. Hyunseok is still reeling from the fact that he managed to beat someone with double his stats with only a simple kick. But his delusions get cut short when a goblin reports about the presence of talas. Hyunseok has no idea what these creatures are. Culkin says the meat doesn't taste bad, but the bone marrow is considered a delicacy. Apparently, talas are spider-like creatures with skulls for their bodies. They live in groups, which makes it a bit complicated to hunt them. Talas have very strong maternal instincts. If they see their young ones in danger, mother talas go berserk. Hyunseok thinks it is not worth it to hunt talas given their description, but Culkin is all for it, so the chef gives the order to attack as many talas as possible. Goblins swarm around the little ones, making sure they do not spill any of their tasty meat juices. Of course, Hyunseok has no choice but to join. He employs his cheap trick of stealing the final blow so he can level up. After a while, the demonic kitchen staff have piled mounds of skulls. Hyunseok gets his last hit in, earning him 2 level ups. He feels proud of his performance, but then something starts to feel off. He senses a great presence behind him. The Talas Queen has arrived. She looks larger, with a female body coming out of the mouth of the skull body. She mourns as she looks at mounds of her slain young ones, ready to be harvested and devoured. Hyunseok checks the creature's stats and gets a horrifying shock. As the Talas Queen roars, the device registers that her strength is immeasurable, and they have just slain her children, which makes her beyond livid. Now the hunters are about to be hunted. Hyunseok looks on in terror as the Queen Talas roars in anger and grief over her slain children. He doesn't notice that another swarm of Talas is about to attack. Behind him, he sees Culkin and the others have run for their lives. With no other choice, Hyunseok runs as well to avoid the Queen's rampage. Many goblins have been impaled by the Queen's sharp legs, which immediately reduces their number in half. Hyunseok keeps thinking that he must not stop running or else it will be the end of him. In this scenario, he doesn't have the luxury to think about others except for his safety. Soon, Rachel leads him to the entrance of a large cavern. She assures Hyunseok that she's checked it earlier and it's safe to hide there in the meantime. This is a better option than the open forest, so Hyunseok runs inside the cavern. As he walks along the passageway, he notices the walls are wide and tall, making him wonder if this cave was formed naturally. Rachel agrees with his observation, even commenting that the Queen Talas can fit in here. Hyunseok gets a sudden realization as he looks at the slimy green substance scattered all over the place. He remembers that Culkin said earlier that there are no talas near the area. But what if they are just hiding inside this cave? The green slime connected by cobwebs, as well as those round-shaped objects on the ground, could be a form of excretions from talas. Hyunseok wonders if they have really wandered into a tala's nest, because if that is the case, then they are in far more danger than being exposed outside. As if to answer his question, 2 bright green spots shine from the dark. And from there, another female talas emerges, ready to spear him with its sharp leg. Hyunseok and Rachel try to run back to where they came from, but they get confused with the direction. Then Hyunseok slips among clusters of those round-shaped things. They are slimy, but he thinks they can be used as weapons. He grabs one and throws it right at the talas, who screeches and catches it as gently as possible. She seems relieved as she cradles the object near her chest. Hyunseok sees this and wonders why the Talas reacted that way. Rachel concludes these round things must be Tala's eggs. Well, Hyunseok says he can use the female Tala's aggressive maternal instincts to his advantage. He grabs another egg, which makes the Talas whimper in apprehension. Rachel also grabs another egg, and the Talas screeches in fear, trying to plead with them not to do anything harmful to those eggs. But Hyunseok gets into position. He throws the egg like he is pitching inside a baseball stadium, with Rachel following along. The Talas tries to catch all the eggs, and Hyunseok and Rachel keep on throwing them. Soon, the Talas gets tired, and she misses the eggs, causing them to crack on the ground. Hyunseok's luck runs out as well, as there are no more eggs to throw. Furious that they used her eggs against her, the Talas screeches in pure wrath. It chases quickly after them. Hyunseok orders Rachel to cast a buff on him. At this point, he has no choice but to face the monster head-on, relying on the fact that it is tired from catching eggs. Just as the queen reaches for him, Hyunseok counterattacks, punching the lower jaw of the skull body. The force manages to send the Talas away, and the system rewards Hyunseok with level-ups. But alas, he is still a weak human fighting an overpowered monster. Fortunately, Rachel manages to heal him quickly. The magic healing would not have been effective if he had not invested in magic points earlier. Using this brief moment, Hyunseok allocates his points, making his stats almost at the same level. Then they hear a familiar voice calling Hyunseok's name. It turns out Chef Culkin has also decided to hide here inside the cave. Culkin says he was running away when he found the cave and hid here. He feels proud and lucky to be safe inside here. Hyunseok reveals to him this is a Tala's nest, which abruptly stops Culkin from talking. He looks back from where he came, where there are several eggs on the ground surrounded by green slime. Hyunseok confirms this is the Tala's hatchery. Suddenly, Culkin's eyes turn pretty and dreamy. He holds one egg as if he is holding the rarest treasure in the world. As a chef, it is a dream come true to find the best delicacy that is only mostly reserved for high-ranking officers. Hyunseok slaps Culkin in the head, reminding him that they are not here to taste exquisite cuisine, but to save themselves from the wrath of the Talas. But Culkin chooses to focus on the eggs. The Queen Talas chasing him earlier may have already entered the cave, which means they are trapped. In addition, only a court commander can take down a Queen Talas. Therefore, there is no need to get anxious over their safety, as they are certainly doomed to their death. At least they can have the best meal before they die. Just as he says that, a few goblins have managed to find them, although they are most likely lost in the winding paths of the cave. Culkin generously offers them the eggs. Hyunseok can't believe this. He can't just accept that his life will end here, and the eggs will be his last meal. He hasn't even met his future wife, and now he's facing a pointless death. This can't be. He must escape no matter what. Hyunseok continues to lament his impending fate. Meanwhile, back in the fortress, Redrun has just returned from an important mission. He reports to Hemis' office to give an update. He says he has successfully captured the next saintess of the Holy Empire. Hemis is happy to hear this news. She taps Redrun's head like a furry pet. She is impressed that the demon officer has broken through what she calls a fanatical cult in just 3 weeks. As usual, Redrun looks abashed upon receiving praise. At that moment, there is an urgent knock on the door. Hemis is slightly annoyed at this interruption of a great moment, but she entertains the goblin reporting. The goblin says the whole of the kitchen staff has gone to gather ingredients when an incident occurred. Hemis brushes this off, saying incidents are a regular occurrence in the kitchen. Why bother making a report about it? The goblin, trembling in fear, says this time is quite serious. The Queen Talas appeared, jeopardizing the whole staff, and now most of the cooks, including the head chef Culkin, are either dead or missing. Both Redrun and Hemis are shocked. Redrun asks about Hyunseok. The goblin reports that the beastkeeper is also missing. Redrun can't seem to believe that this would happen to one of his favorite people. Back in the cave, the goblins have started their life-end party by using the eggs' tasty broth as drinks. They make a toast for their deaths. Culkin looks on approvingly. While Hyunseok is still shocked, Culkin expresses his wishes to see his brave comrades again in Valhalla, and that is when Hyunseok slaps him with a book, shouting that Culkin must get a hold of himself. When Culkin looks at him, Hyunseok tells him he just hit him with his secret weapon since he seems to have fallen under a wicked spell. The secret weapon is actually a book Hyunseok bought from the hero shop. It is a beast encyclopedia that contains almost all the relevant information about all the demonic beasts of this world. There is a section about Talas that gives detailed information about their characteristics. Talas are spider-like demons that live in groups, and they have particularly sturdy legs. To defeat the Talas, one must target its relatively weaker areas like the head and the torso. Their bodily fluids are highly flammable, and the eggs contain a combustible liquid similar to a bomb. The caves created with Talas saliva are also weak against fire. The book warns against using fire magic when inside a Talas cave. There, the information Hyunseok needs to get them all out safely. He asks Kulkan if he can use fire magic. The chef says he can, but nothing more complicated than shooting flames. Kulkan tells Hyunseok to give up and simply accept his fate. The skull body of Talas, called carapace, is not easily penetrable by fire. However, that is not what Hyunseok has in mind. Addressing the few goblins still celebrating, Hyunseok announces that he has an escape plan. He tries to entice the goblins by saying that if they survive, they can keep eating the exquisite Talas eggs juice. But the goblins sneer at him. They are already devouring those eggs. Why put more effort into eating them? Hyunseok changes his promise, saying he will provide unlimited servings of luxurious gourmet demonic beast meat as a survival celebration. At this, the goblins become alert. Even Kulkan turns to him with puppy eyes and asks for the plan. Kulkan really likes assertive guys. After briefing them all, Hyunseok reminds them one crucial thing. They must not stop running under any circumstances. They must run until they make it outside. Everyone agrees. With everyone clutching an egg in each hand, they all start running. They are greeted by a swarm of adult female Talas, ready to devour them. Hyunseok tells Kulkan to get ready as he raises a hand with one egg. Then Hyunseok throws the egg, not towards the Talas, but towards the cave wall. Kulkan follows it up with a fire shot, which instantly makes a moderate explosion. The Talas swarm around the walls as if guarding them from collapsing. As expected, Hyunseok's hunch is right. The Talas are more concerned with fire spreading throughout the cave than hunting them. If the cave collapses, the remaining eggs hidden in other parts will be destroyed. To the goblins, Hyunseok shouts they must continue running while the Talas are distracted. However, more Talas appear, spearing the goblins one by one. Still, Hyunseok encourages them to continue running and focus on surviving. He himself throws eggs here and there, and Kulkan shoots each with his fire magic, causing explosions all around them. At last, there is only one egg left for them. They must find the exit. Rachel shouts that she can see the light not far from them. Then that must be the sit. Hyunseok rallies his comrades to run towards the light. They dodge attacks, but they are far weaker than their enemies. Their small number continues to lessen, and Hyunseok repeats that it is just a little bit further. Soon, they reach the exit. But they can't celebrate, not just yet. For the final boss is blocking the way. The Queen of the Talas looks down on them, her wrath emanating from her bulging skull body. It looks like there is no more hope. In front of them is the Queen looking for vengeance. Behind them are explosions and screams of those they have left behind. And they only have one egg left as their weapon. But Hyunseok notices something. The Queen is not attacking them directly. Using this opportunity, Hyunseok rips his sleeves and tries to catch the Queen's attention. He asks Kulkan to light up the torn sleeve. The chef is confused, but he follows the order. Once the sleeve is burning, Hyunseok shouts to the Queen that he will burn the very last egg he is holding. If this egg explodes, everyone will die, and there will be no more Talas to exist. The only way to prevent that is for the Queen to move aside and let them pass. It looks like the Queen understood what Hyunseok said, because she looks angrier and torn between impaling them and stepping aside. But she makes a decision. She steps towards these measly creatures terrorizing her children. Out of options, Hyunseok lights the egg with the burning sleeve, then throws it towards the inside of the cave. It causes an explosion. However, it seems to have triggered something far more terrible. They all feel the shaking of the cave. Just then, a boulder collapses, revealing the Talas chasing them earlier. Hyunseok shouts for everyone to run towards the exit, as it is their last chance for survival. Another boulder collapses, this time onto the Talas. As it turns out, the cave is collapsing due to the successive explosions Hyunseok and his team have created on their way out. Now the cave boulders are falling on the Talas, preventing them from catching their prey. But Hyunseok notices one more thing. Every time a boulder hits a Talas, the system rewards him with level up points. Rachel panics when he stops. She tries to pull his hair just to get him running again. But Hyunseok is mesmerized. Against the flaming red explosions and rocks falling, the blue status windows of the system stand out, showing him his rapid leveling. Hyunseok is happy that he is leveling up, but he is also confused. How is this happening?